Hello, everybody. Welcome back for another episode of DTIYDK. Don't talk if you don't know, the podcast dedicated to the highest level of teamfight tactics in North America. I am Frodan, your host, joined by my co-host Bryce, sitting very far away from this cam. Bryce, how you doing on this fine Thursday evening?
Am I close enough? I'm good. I'm exhausted. It's a really busy week. Two of our lawyers are out of office this week, and we're not that big of a team, so it's a lot of extra stuff to spread around in a small group of people. But I'm hanging out with you. I'm hanging out with Ramkev, and we're going to talk about TFT. What a time to be alive. I'm excited.
It's going to be great. Our special guest, fresh off a doubleheader, Ramkev is... Oops, sorry about that. Ramkev is... coming straight up from his Triforce Tactics podcast. I was super tired today, so I took a nap and slept through most of it. How was the podcast, Ram? Kev?
Oh, it was good. We talked about the tourney format. I had some things to say. I actually had a lot of things to say, but it was it was a good time. It's a good time. Go check it out if you can.
Yeah, Ramkev, a solid participant in the Twitlonger meta. Is taking the TFT community by storm.
He's climbing. He's climbing the Twitlonger meta.
Yeah. Did you guys come to any new conclusions? Did you guys have any aha moments on the podcast?
Aha moments? Not really. We were actually, I think afterwards, Jirachi wasn't there for that episode, but they were taking a look at the scoring system in particular, because I think one of the arguments that I saw against changing the scoring system was that it didn't matter for the most part, like how it affects the results, but there are instances where it does matter, and from a worst case analysis standpoint, the argument for holding it just doesn't hold up. Maybe you don't specifically shift to 1 through 8, but it's a matter of in the worst case scenario, what happens when it goes wrong, right? And if it goes wrong, then you sort of have to consider that and not just sort of brush it off as something that doesn't change things too much, but might still have an effect.
All right, well, that's a little bit of a preview of the Triforce Tactics podcast. They're talking about the point structure, right? Giving points 1 to 10 versus just doing a flat 1 to 8. You can go ahead and check it out. We don't want to encroach too much on their territory since they're talking a lot about everything TFT and from a broad perspective. But this podcast, as you know, is dedicated to the hardcore of TFT, aka the players themselves and how they perform. So today's episode is going to be pretty much a lot of the same. We're going to be we're basically wrapping up the intro as we speak right now. Just let's go ahead and just do a 30,000 view Ramkev, just because we do these episodes once a month. How have you been enjoying 6.5 Neon Nights just from the 30,000 foot view? What's been some of the highs and some of the lows for you?
I think it's been great. I've had a lot of fun. Yeah, I'm really trying to think of... I don't think there's been any point in 6.5 where I haven't really enjoyed the game. Last patch had some really strong reroll comps, but... I'm in the B patch now, so I can probably say last patch. But, I think there's a good amount of flexibility. I like the augments that they've added. I was looking through some of the stats for augments, because I do that when I play the game and when I'm not playing the game, because I just think it's fun.
Me too. I'm a nerd about that stuff.
Yeah. They had this one augment that they don't actually use.
Oh, interesting. It's just part of the data, but it never dropped.
It's not actually shipped. It's this scrap related augment that lets you get reforgers and
I know what you're talking about. I forgot what it's called.
And it shows up in the stats. Yeah, I forget what it's called too, because I just saw it, but it shows 0 out of 0 games played, but for some reason it has a 4.5 average placement with a
what?
non-zero win rate.
That's dope.
I don't understand how. They must have scraped some PBE or something like that. Basically, it was like it was basically giving you like a Reforger every single round or something like that. And in PB, I remember my bench got so full of Reforgers I couldn't even pick up anything, but I didn't want to reforge any items either, so it was like a really awkward argument. That's funny.
Yeah.
That is what I mean. That sounds terrible, honestly. So I'm not like no part of me is sad that I haven't gotten the opportunity to play with it. But I mean, it must be being an augment brainstorming sessions must be so fun, right? Like whatever you want. Right. What do you got?
There's always like these custom expansions that people make of other like card games and whatnot. I imagine that if they continue to bring back augments, I'm sure there's going to be people who draft up their own like wild like custom augment stuff, and which the TFT team can draw some inspiration. But
I'm hoping they bring back some of the trait related stuff from like older sets. You know, like if we could have something related to summoning.
Dude, Summoner's my favorite trait in the history of TFT. Every time I talk to Mortdog, I'm like, so when are Summoners coming back?
Set 2, Rise of the Elements. So Summoners basically all was like this vertical trait. It was a class that would always just summon some kind of minions, but part of the problem was that a lot of them you couldn't interact with. Like Zyra would summon these plants that would just deal damage, and there was no way for you to do anything, and she would always summon it right next to you. And Zero was the same way too. It was just a lot of randomness that was very hard to control and super buggy as well, I believe.
The Azir stuff. the defining set 2 gameplay is when Azir summons a soldier behind your carry.
Yes.
2 shots in.
It's literally the Azir versus Azir battle, and one of them summons this freaking soldier frontline that just like sits on a tank, and the other one just 2 taps the other person's Azir.
Yep.
Very skill expressive. I loved it. I don't care. It was still fun.
Yeah.
Good times indeed. But you know, we're not here necessarily just to talk about, you know, memory lane and stroll down it. Let's talk a little bit about the tournaments that have happened since. So let's go ahead and recap some of the stuff that's happened. So first things first, we'll talk a little bit about the current state of snapshots. Then we're going to talk about the 2 tournaments that happened since then. Currently in snapshots, there's 2 spots that will be going to players from 6.5 that qualify for regionals. Right now, it seems like Goose has ran away with it. And then the next highest player is actually Ramkev, but Ramkev
we can move down from there.
We can move down from there. So you kind of were saying like you were thinking about a new challenger series. That's not happening. So you're not going to take the spot either.
Nope. Okay. That's going to the next person on waitlist.
Okay, and who is that? Taking a look at it real quick. Bryce, do you know? Actually, I'm looking at it right now, trying to acknowledge who is the next highest person. I think it's Kurum's snapshot account, but like I was saying yesterday, Ed is not Kurum's account because Kurum X is also on a break.
I think that's Jigglypuff King.
Okay,
in which case Jigglypuff King's not eligible, right? So it might be just trade.
I've heard some speculation.
Okay, so it's trade.
It might be trade.
But one thing I want to point out is this list is already difficult to parse of who is eligible. Just it goes to show you that the consistency of some of these players already is there, right? Like we have to go 10, 12 deep before we start finding other players that haven't already qualified, which I think is ultimately a good indicator. It doesn't tell you the entire health of everything, but I like that. Second thing that we want to pull up is the mid-set finale that happened in February with Kivix taking that win off of a very exciting finish. Kivix, if people didn't know, was re-rolling everything. He felt like he was Ramkev in his chaotic good form, which is Kivix says, okay, I have 4 copies of this unit. Let's just see how far we can re-roll it. And Kivix ended up winning off of a mutant Heimerdinger that was just machine gunning. He had blue buff Synaptic Web Heimerdinger and was rapid firing everything. And that was the first time he ever played that build. It was in tournament, is the finals. He was trying to win the tournament, and he stole it from DQA. This is also the tournament, by the way, that DQA lost to the Rift Herald in that fateful moment.
Yes.
Kivix is, if not the biggest, certainly in my like top 2 or 3 biggest wildcards for regionals, because plays a completely different style from the rest of the field and is able to pull out like crazy game after crazy game, and he is the player that like almost no one ranked him, right? I think like one person ranked Kivix in their list of 15. And yeah, I just think he's dangerous, right? Like it depends a lot on the meta and what's viable and how contested it is. I joked that the last patch would have been like Kivix's time to shine, and I think you made a good point that it actually wouldn't have done well because all the different stuff he would everyone would have been rerolling. What he wants is a meta where no one is rerolling. He can basically just pick whichever lane he gets to go into and be completely uncontested there.
It's a really good point. We haven't really seen much of Kivix this set. Like I don't even know how much
he's I haven't seen Kivix in like any of my games.
Yeah, and that's absolutely like, zero.
You can only really make these kind of judgments when you've seen them like show up in your games, because there's some regulars that you always see, but like I was just thinking about it, like why did I not include Kivix on my list? And it's legitimately because I have not seen Kivix in my games in like many months.
Yeah, I mean he's not playing. I looked up his profile when I was doing my rankings because I think I was like gonna give him a spicy, like put him around 12th or 13th and see what happens ranking, and I was like, oh, he's not playing. Never mind, take it all back.
All right, and
I think he's like 500 LP or something when I looked.
We'll see. There's another player that's actually around that range, like 500 LP, is Ramblinnn. Ramblinnn actually hasn't been playing that much. I think that's shaken up a little bit of people's confidence with him currently in the rankings, which we'll show in a minute here or two. And then Setsuko wraps at the top 4. Very, very solid top 4 overall. And I thought mid-set finale was really good. Let's go ahead and show the Innovation Cup that also was this past weekend that Bryce got to finally cast. That was probably one of the highlights for me on top of the results themselves. Bryce, how did it feel to be casting TFT?
God, I missed it so much. I had so much fun. And I don't know if they just felt like better games because I hadn't gotten to do it in so long, or if they actually were. But I on Sunday, games 4 and 6, the Appies NAR 3 board that he almost won a lobby with, building like the most hodgepodge garbage board where we're looking at it, trying to analyze it, and we're like, we have no idea what the fuck is happening here. And then I went back and watched his VOD afterwards because I was so curious about the path. And the path is basically like low roll early, low roll middle, low roll late, decide why not, NAR 3 is an out, play for it, maybe I'll get a 6th, and he keeps winning. And like as it's going on further and further, Appies is just getting more and more hyped, but has no idea why it's working. He's like, I don't know why it's good, but I'm amazing at TFT. I'm the greatest TFT player of all time. It's so good. So that was super fun. And then Nico rolling 2-1 Mercs and getting the win in that final lobby was so fun. It was so hype.
That was really good stuff. Appies has, I think, really impressed a lot of people. And it doesn't really come as a surprise much to players like Ramkev, I think, who's been hanging out with him. I also thought that, Kev, I know that you said that at the very end of their tournament, you're kind of like mentally checked out. I thought you put on a pretty good performance as well. You know, just talking about your own tournament performance throughout that weekend, do you walk away pretty satisfied?
Yeah, I mean, like, the way that I would say it is you can look at the last day and see how much Twitch reroll I played. And you can really tell, like, there was a point where I just like, I don't want to move on with this. I'll play Twitch reroll because it's like it's sort of the most brain dead. I just need to hit Twitch 3 and go on. But you know, the other 2 days I was sort of just having fun. Yeah, I think it was first day where I basically dropped the tweet that said that I was going to write the tweet longer. And by that time, I had already sort of made the decision that, you know, whatever happens this tournament doesn't really matter to me because I'm not going to move forward with playing in tournaments after this one, at least for set 6, right? So, you know, last day I was actually, you know, between games I was just writing my tweet longer, and that was sort of what was going on there.
That makes so much sense. I was so curious, actually.
Yeah.
Like this, it explains a lot because you played beautiful TFT days 1 and 2, and I think that it was pretty clear to me that you and Goobums were playing the best TFT in the tournament, and I couldn't figure out why. If you had like a lobby read that suggested to you that you needed to, that you like wanted to be rerolling Twitch, or if you just got like crazy openings for what's going on, right? It's so hard to tell.
Yeah, I mean, like the thing about Twitch reroll is because Twitch reroll is actually before Twitch was strong, right? Before anybody was playing Twitch reroll, I was already playing Twitch reroll. So, I mean, besides maybe Casper, but like,
like
for me,
six?
it's yeah, set 6, right?
Okay.
Even set 6 going into set 6.5, I was probably playing the most Twitch reroll by the end of set 6, and so I was for me, like, it's a comp that I can just be like, I'm comfortable with just going for a Twitch 3. And then moving him around my board and trying to kill some units. But yeah, that was sort of like my last day. The other 2 days, I was just like messing around, having like trying to like a lot of the boards that I ended up with were kind of weird. I don't really even remember any of the boards that I played and set in the first 2 days. I actually don't remember it. Wait. I had that one Yordle game.
Oh, that's right. You went 6 Yordles and clutched it out.
I went 6 Yordles.
Yep. Yeah.
I had that one. I played a game with Share the Spotlight. I wish people had seen that game. It was actually the craziest. Basically, because Share the Spotlight is very it's prismatic, so it can. In those lobbies, the power level is already really skewed. It was prismatic first augment, and I got like probably one of the worst socialite spots you could ever get is the top right one. So you get 4 Share the Spotlight hexes, right? And your entire like all that clump is just griefed. It's all you can't do anything there. And I played. Basically, that game, I just had a TG on a 3-star Gnar. And I put 2-star Senna with, like, a Last Whisper and, like, the behind hex. And I got a second that game, and it was actually nuts.
Oh,
it was actually insane.
You're sick.
But that was a really fun game. I actually am not too sure. Do either of you know, like, if Share the Spotlight, if you don't put it on the socialite hex and you put it somewhere else, does it actually get more of the buff?
No. Someone confirmed that they all get the same.
Okay. Yeah, because like afterwards, I read the augment again, and I was like, wait, because I had the Gnar in that one in the actual socialite hex, and then I looked at it again, and I was like, wait, did I like grief myself? Like, did I not get the full value out of this Gnar? Because it was no synergy Gnar. It was just Gnar.
Just socialite.
just socialite Gnar.
Did you play 3 socialite?
Yeah, I played 3 socialites. So I had if I remember correctly, the board was Gnar, Seraphine, Senna with TG Gnar, like a Rage Blade, Seraphine, Oriana, Zillion, and one of the other innovator units. It was Echo. Echo was the other one. And then I had the little bug right near the socialite hex so I wouldn't get completely destroyed. And I think that was the board, actually. There might have been a Lulu in there somewhere. I don't really remember.
Lulu? What? Why?
For Yordles to print money? I don't know. Socialites are pretty expensive.
Or maybe there was... Yeah, I just don't... There must have been like a scrap... It was probably Ezreal. Wait, who are the innovators? Echo,
Ezreal, Singe,
Zillion,
Seraphine, obviously.
And then Jace.
So I feel like it was Ezreal.
Yeah, if you're playing Scrap, you probably played Ezreal, Echo, Seraphine.
Yeah, it was. I think it was definitely Ezreal, just in the back line for the innovator bug. Because I don't think I rolled an Irelia.
Unlock.
Well, it sounds like a pretty wild game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sad we missed that. And also, just another thing that tournaments are missing, just the ability to catch these kind of moments, even if they're after the fact. Because I think that would have been pretty hilarious to watch you struggle to find a way to make it work and then making it work.
I was... I got to tell you how sad I was when I saw that share the spotlight hex. I was like, oh my god.
And that augment's so good too, right? You think you like
Yeah,
high
it's
rolled like
incredible, it's
crazy, and you're like, oh, this is such a good opening. Do you get a Senna with it? You do, right?
You do get a Senna. You get a
God
Senna.
How
Like,
does this-
I had Gnar drop. I had Gnar drop off of creep, so I was like, oh, I have to take this. This is actually gonna be so good. And then I saw that hex, and I was like, I regret this immediately.
Dan, I'm actually good with it dropping the units. I think it's better to have them drop the units and have them feel slightly overtuned and feel higher roll than it is to not give the units and just have the experience of taking the thing and playing the game without it online for such a long time. It just feels so bad. There are very few worse feelings than like Junkyard without scrap.
It's exactly the example I was going to bring.
Thieving rascals without Yordles. Like, it all feels so bad. Share the spotlight and then you're just like waiting for a 3 cost. It becomes like a...
Yeah.
It feels so bad.
But Junkyard is like
so
okay.
Good.
Junkyard is one where I feel like it might be Junkyard specifically, but that's only because, and this might be something similar with any type of Yordle augment as well, is just because there are so many 1 costs in that trait that it's okay. But like if you're dealing with anything like snipers or like, you know, anything where you only have 1 of the 1 cost units in there, I feel like you kind of, I mean, outside of Mercs, obviously, because Mercs is Mercs, but
yeah, can you imagine if like Merc gave a
you get 1
unit?
GP?
Oh my god!
It would be like the highest win rate augment.
Yeah.
Everybody would like take it insta.
Right now, it's like really low. Actually, the data on like Merc Heart, Merc Soul.
Yeah, I mean,
It always is.
It's always been down at the bottom. But like the thing is, if you look at like the win rate compared to like the top 4 rate, the win rate is just way higher, right? Because that's just the nature of it, right? Like you're gonna cash, and I think that's good. You don't really want to see the mercenary augments like be you know, highest win rate but also a consistent top 4, because if that's the case, it's obviously, you know, the trade itself is overtuned, right? But yeah.
All right. Well, I wasn't expecting you to talk a little bit about too much about the game state itself, but that was some good stuff. Let's go ahead and kind of center back our discussion and focus on the rankings themselves. Talk a little bit about our first initial gut reaction. So here's the rankings fresh off the press. It's a little bit different from the ones we posted. We recognize that some of the number changes were not correct. So this is the correct version. And we're just going to go down the list. So Setsuko comes in at number 1, kind of reclaiming his throne as he was very close to the top in number 1 of the first edition, and then took a step back. Ramblinnn improves to 2nd. Milk, who was ranked number 1 in the 2nd edition, now is 3rd. SpicyAppies making a massive jump to 4th. Spencer just right there, consistent in the middle of the pack. Goobum's moving up. Robin moving up. Socks having a big movement down. I think a lot of people were, you know, kind of not sure where to put Socks. And what really interesting particular is that the big point gap starting to happen around here, where most people just weren't really unanimously agreed beyond the top 7/8. We have Dishsoap leading the pack out of the bottom half of the list, which was particularly interesting. Soju comes in here at 10th. Iniko, DQA, Aesah, Nubal, and Pawnup. So right off the bat, Bryce, what's your gut instinct or reaction when you look at this list and see what we got here?
I think this is really good. I feel like there was a very clear tiering out, and I know we'll talk about some of the gaps, but like I think that this was directionally really correct, and I think that different people can disagree about how you should sequence the top 7, and I think different people can disagree about how you could sequence the bottom. And then you've got Socks on an island in the middle, which is just so clearly to me that everyone went through the exact same analysis, because I know I beat myself up over this a lot, which is if Socks is in form, playing his best TFT, he is obviously one of the best 3 players in North America. He's just such a special player of the game. But he has a kid. He has not been in form truly this entire set. This is not surprising to me. Also having a kid, before he had the kid, I was the one out there being like, anyone who expects Socks to be competing at this level Next said is kind of crazy. It's having a kid is way too disruptive to your sleep schedule, which is too disruptive to your life. It adds a meaningful amount of anxiety. There's a whole bunch of things going on here that will not make you play your best teamfight tactics. And so I think that Sox is like on an island in the middle because no one knows where to put him. Like no one knows whether or not they're going to get like top 3 form Sox or maybe not even doesn't belong on the list Sox. And only time is going to tell.
Yeah, also Sox is designing his own auto battler game as well for fun. And so there's just only so much time in the day. And I think, Sox sometimes, performs like a god amongst men, but he's finding out how mortal he is at times. Plus, if you heard him, he wasn't really that prepared for Innovation Cup, so he was sweating a little bit when other players were making a deep run versus some of the people that he needed to. Ramkev, when you look at this list, does it seem right to you when we're looking ahead to regionals?
I mean, yeah, I think a lot of it makes sense. I'm actually surprised that I think Goose is not so like a big name that's not on the list, who's still like active playing a lot. And he did sort of bomb out day 1 of Innovation Cup, if I remember correctly. I do think, from my perspective, because I watch him a lot, I do have a sort of good idea of why that happened, actually. And I think he also has a good idea of why that happens, is mostly because if anybody remembers, the patch going into this Innovation Cup tourney was actually a big nerf to innovators, right? And I watched a lot of Goose games going into it, just because that's the default channel that I put on, and he was like, that was sort of like his early game. That was really like where he was getting a lot of strength from the board from, and you can sort of see from like the ladder results, right? Because he was climbing like a madman with that strategy, and so like. When the patch comes around and when it gets nerfed, I see why it happened, but like overall from watching his play, I think that he's in form actually, and I think that he's capable of actually like doing pretty well. I wouldn't say like I probably wouldn't have him in the top 10, but in the like. Actually, where did I put him? I did put him exactly 10. I gave him exactly 10.
Yeah, so you would have him in the top 10.
Yeah, I would have him in the top 10. Yeah, but it's surprising.
I don't think it's surprising.
Yeah.
It hurt. I barely put him on my list. He made 15th on my list. He's not on Dan's list, and I can't really like gripe with that. I would love to be wrong. I have loved watching Goose play TFT longer than I've loved watching anyone play TFT. I think he's a special player. I think he has enormous potential. He hasn't put up in a tournament since set 3. Right?
Yeah, I guess set 4 he also was it set 5. I do remember he won like 1 tournament in those sets. Yeah, like in the big ones,
he might have had like one good tournament at some point, but it's not like he's like consistently doing well in tournaments, but like not getting like getting unlucky or like not getting over the hump or whatever. He's consistently pretty bad in tournaments, and I think it's very. I mean, I've watched a ton of his tournament play in order to better understand it. And I've talked about it in the podcast before. Like he just plays like it's ladder, and it's not ladder. And so he just isn't able to streak for free in the way that he's used to being able to streaking for free. He doesn't know how to play lost streak or from behind. And he's way too conditioned to play tempo-oriented TFT without being punished on the back end of it. So there's no restraint to his play. He doesn't not slam an item on Wolves because he has to recognize that like his board has to be able to scale, and so he needs to keep an extra component open because he has to play around that component in order to build a board that scales. He just slams everything. And it's like, it'll be fine. I'll just top 4, and he just doesn't. Everyone gets strong, and then he just loses every fight, and he takes a 7th or a 6th, right? And games that he would normally like kind of BS his way into a first, people are playing too efficiently around their power spikes and getting to different power levels, and a game that he would win on ladder becomes a 3rd or a 4th. And so I just don't think he's a good tournament player. I want to be wrong. I would love to eat my words. Please, Goose, make me eat my words.
Well, we'll see. I wanted to pull up one of the more interesting ballots. The only other person to rank Goose significantly high enough to get points was Robinsongz. So Robin and Ramkev were the only people that ranked Goose for significant points. But also look at Robin's middle of the pack. He ranked Soju higher than Ramblinnn. And I think this in itself would, one, Soju would nod, or probably, actually, Soju would probably even call it out himself and be like, what are you talking about? Actually, I changed my opinion. This in itself has made me question, what is Robinsongz smoking? Is it DJ Robinsongz coming out of the woodwork here?
He's got secret insight actually. Didn't he hit rank 1 last night or something?
Yeah, for like 5 seconds, and then Setsuko took it back.
Exactly. do not doubt rank 1 reasoning.
Yeah. This whole list is full of hot takes. He has Dishsoap at 5, Iniko at 6, Pawnup at 7, Soju at 8, Ramblinnn at 9. Spencer's really low. Milk is really low. Honestly, this to me, it has to be an evaluation of his expectation in terms of how seriously they're going to be prepped for it. And I think that's fair analysis for a lot of these people, but anyone who expects Ramblinnn to show up to regionals at less than full form, I think just doesn't follow Ramblinnn, because he's the hardest working player in TFT. And there's no doubt in my mind that in 2 weeks, Ramblinnn can get fully up to speed and be a fucking god, and that's exactly what I expect him to do. So Robin clearly doesn't think that, because I know Robin thinks Ramblinn's is the best player in North America when he's in form.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Again, the prompt was, them predicting based off the regionals form and what they'll be like, right? So alternatively, Nature's, who is, for people who don't know, Nature's former competitive TFT player, now works as the project manager of TFT over at Wisdom, aka Giant Slayer TV, the organizer for pretty much everything North American TFT sports. Nature's puts Ramblinnn number 1, right? Milk number 2. He's going by traditional thought of where he expects people to be. And then you see that he does value people like, Spencer and Robin just a little bit lower. Also, shout out to Nubal. I think Nubal it's actually the first time we've ever had Nubal on this power ranking, which I think is quite shocking to a lot of people who followed TFT for the past few sets. But this is also the most serious Nubal has been about TFT in quite some time. He's actually climbing a lot, and I was talking about this yesterday on the Teamfight Talk Show podcast. This is the first time in a long time where I am fearing Nubal on ladder. In set 6, the dude was so free because he was playing on mobile. He apparently his GPU fried. He just couldn't get it all up in time, and he was going to school. So he was playing on mobile, and he was just so easy to predict with his side swaps with Yone, for example. It was just too easy. Now I'm I just do not want Nubal in my games. It feels like no matter what, he will always outplace me, even if I'm 3rd or 2nd. So I'm really excited to see Nubal.
Yeah. So I have this thing where I am not allowed to put Nubal anywhere close to my top 15.
Really? He's on the shit list. Yeah. Ramkev has a shit list.
He has been in my game and sold in Udyr 3 while I was there and watching him. So he is permanently outside of NA top 1000 until the rest of forever.
Oh, take it back. There's nothing you can do. Take it back.
You can't take it back. You actually can't take that kind of stuff back. So unfortunately, I'm just I can't stick him any higher than 1001.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a respect. Everyone has their criteria. We talked about Kivix earlier as a wild card at regionals. Nubal was the wild card of all wild cards, because in set 5, set 4, when you talk about the up and coming players, the way everyone talks about Setsuko right now, that's how everyone talked about Nubal. Where if you watched him play, you knew the kid had it. You knew it was special. It was a standard deviation above what many of the best players were capable of when he was playing at form, and he just never clicked for him in tournaments. I watched some of his tournament games. It never felt like he was playing his perfect style. There must have been some nerves going on there, but I also think he did was on the lower end of variance for some of those events. So I'm not saying I think that he's an outstanding tournament player and that he belongs in the top 3 when in form, but I mean, he's 14th on the list, and his skill ceiling is every bit as high as the top 3.
Yeah, Nubal gets some respect from some of the other panelists. Gangly put him, around there, the 10th or 11th range. Setsuko also doing the same thing. By the way, this is the first time, and this is we didn't really make big fanfare about it because we don't want to make a big deal, but this is the first time Setsuko has ever revealed his face to the internet. Even before his own friends. DQA, who, shout out to him, he's been killing it past couple of tournaments and also qualified for regionals, also a guest panelist for this time around. DQA, Spencer, and all of them were like, WTF, we've been trying to ask Setsuko to reveal his face to us for years. And he hasn't even done that. And yet, the first time you asked him to be on the podcast, Setsuko reveals his cutie pie face to all of us. So thank you, Setsuko. What a nice gift to DTIYDK. And I think he feels rewarded, you know, getting number 1 ranked. But once more, we have players who don't even rank themselves as number 1. I feel like this is kind of the eternal thing about TFT players. Milk didn't put himself number 1 when he was ranked 1. Setsuko's not going to do that. If we ever get Ramblinnn on the podcast, which I hope we do, I bet he won't put himself number 1 either. So, Bryce, what is it about these players? Is that a common thread, or is that just coincidence?
I think it depends a lot on the style of player. Like, if Soju was the best player in North America, I promise you he puts himself number 1. It just depends on who it is. Like, Milk is the guy who always is like, I'm bad, but he's actually really good, right? Once he actually figures out, like, he's not that good right now because he's just busy learning. He's just going to play a bunch of games and learn, and then he'll really sweat next week off stream, and you'll DM him the day before regionals and he'll say he's going 888, but in fact he's like definitely one of the favorites for the event because when he's in form he's insane. And I think that certain people have a little bit more of like the humbleness to the way in which they think about their TFT. I think Setsuko falls on that list. Ramblinnn probably falls on that list. I mean, you asked Appies after he won the tournament, like, where do you rank yourself? And he wouldn't even do it. He wouldn't even put a number to it. So I think it's just a personality thing more than anything else.
Fair enough. I want to also make another call out here. Gangly has put Souless at number 2. And I know, Gangly, you had your second kid, and having one is hard enough. Ask Bryson Socks. And I know that having, you know, raising a family in this modern age is really, really difficult. But Souless at number 2. Souless didn't even make the list. Just want to point that out. And yet he gained so many points.
Wait, I put Souless as my number 15 so that he would know that I had him on my list, but he was the last possible option.
Souless comes in at the... So we actually have a snub list. We can actually pull it up in just a second here. But Souless was one of the highest placing players that didn't make the list. Bryce, what's your breakdown on Souless right now?
I mean, only because of Gangly, right? Like, if Gangly didn't give him 14 points, Souless would not be anywhere close to, like, the top snub, right? I'm pretty sure Gangly just has a blind spot on Souless. We all have this. I mean, my blind spot is literally on the podcast with us right now. I literally can't... Ramkev basically had to force me to take him off my list. He like releases this twit longer and is like, don't rank me. Basically, he literally said, don't rank me, don't put me on your list. And I was like, I can't help it, because for me, Ramkev, like these clear tier systems, right? The top 7, Ramkev is in the top 7 tier, right? He's one of the best players in North America, competitive at that level, and I think you can quibble over where he belongs in that top 7, top 8, but there's just decisively there. And I just Souless. For whatever reason, Gangly loves Souless. It's because the tournament data on Souless is so good. That's why. Gangly's a data head, and he loves looking at all the past results, and Souless consistently performs in tournaments. And in fairness to Gangly, we talked about this, Dan, like, Souless showed up at Inno Cup with no prep. He played the day before. I'm watching him play, and I'm like, this man has no idea what's happening. He has no clue. He was competitive. Well, he was solid.
He outplayed Soju. Let's not forget.
He did.
Outplayed Soju at Innovator Cup, and that's actually, I mean, if that's not an argument for why Souless should be higher than Soju on this list, then no other argument exists.
Okay, here's my thing on Souless, because I feel like I didn't really answer Dan's question, which is how I feel about him. I think the results are good. I'm not sure that he passes the eye test. There are games when I watch Souless like eke out a really good result from a game where he takes an unusual line, and I'm super impressed with it. I'm like, wow, what a beautiful game of TFT. I really enjoyed watching that. But the number of times I study Souless VODs, and I'm like, that's a big mistake. That's a big mistake. That's an egregious mistake. I don't even know how that just happened. And that like higher than anyone else on the list. He is so inconsistent in his play. There are times that Souless makes plays that if you put the top 15 in a room and you show them the spot and you show them what Souless did, they would all just be like, they would be rolling their eyes. They would just be flabbergasted at the choice that he made in the game. And it's just very weird to have such a good player who's also capable of making plays that bad in a game of TFT.
Wow. Does one particular instance stand out to you, Bryce? Because you're saying he's making some egregious mistakes. Hit me with an example. You got to back it up.
Okay, we talked about it on the last podcast, I think. But when I was studying, because we hasn't played recently, so it's not like I'm studying recent Soulless gameplay, right?
Okay.
But the tournament immediately before the last podcast, Souless was in a spot where he pre-leveled. I want to go back and find the spot, honestly, and just like show it to you. Like I'd have to go back way deep into his VODs to find it. But he like pre-levels on 1-4 in one. It's one of the worst decisions I've ever seen. Like I looked at this. I looked at the spot. Goobums. So Goobums, I did a VOD review. We talked about the spot a bunch. I went back and looked at the spot like 5 or 6 times because I was trying to figure it out. Right? Why is he doing this? And honestly, my conclusion was that there's no explanation that is actually defensible for the spot. And I'm pretty sure he turned his game
his
from
his finger slipped.
His spot was a solid top 4 opening that he turned into a guaranteed bot 3. Not exaggerating. Like his one decision reduces his average placement by 2 places. It was that bad. It's one of the worst plays I've ever seen in a tournament of TFT. And I'm including everyone. I'm including Zyku in that.
Woof. Let's not get started, Bryce, on Zyku.
Let's not forget about that one game in regionals that I played where I accidentally reforged all of my Olaf items because I couldn't tell the difference between a reforger and a loaded dice.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Wait, but then you end up winning. You end up qualifying for Worlds, right?
I got so lucky. I reforged the items, and I actually got like pretty decent items afterwards.
I was like, wait.
I reforged all 3 of those items, and the moment I saw the items pop off, I was like.
Yeah, we take those. But the thing is, like, okay, stuff like that, like a misclick or like Kyun taking out Mercs, I don't rate that in the same way because it's just like it's a mistake of like the moment of it's like a basketball player like tripping and not making a layup. It's like okay, but it's that's very different than like if you're driving down court, you're down by 1 point, there's no time left on the clock, it's a wide open layup, and you pull up from half court, right? Like that's what Souless did. He pulled up from half court.
Okay, fair enough. And so it's you're saying that not all the mistakes are equal. Yes, there's some catastrophic moments. Like with DQA, he was actually trying to do something pretty smart, but he messed up against the Rift Herald, and that's understandable.
Could not evaluate how strong his board was against Rift Herald. Happens to the worst of us. I mean, the best of us.
Yeah, this was different. This was like a game strategy decision that he made that was completely incorrect.
Okay, fair enough. Is there any other players or things that we want to mention? I mean, I feel like we have to just do our due diligence and give shout outs to some of the new people on the list. I think Iniko killed that Innovation Cup. He was super impressive. Bryce had a very touching speech at the end, just kind of highlighting what he valued in Iniko. Definitely a player, as long as his mental is intact, and I think you can say the same for a lot of these players, very scary when he's on fire. What is it about Dishsoap that's getting people so hyped up? I want to go to Ramkev for this, because you play a lot of ladder. Ramkev's put some of the highest volumes of games out there in solo queue. You've probably queued up against Dishsoap, who has 2 accounts, who's climbing really rapidly.
I mean, where did I put Dishsoap on my list? I need to...
Let me pull it up.
I think you had him kind of high, if memory serves. Like, he was like right in the middle of the pack.
But Ramkev's asking where did he put him?
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think that's where Ramkev put him is what I'm saying. I remember looking.
I'm trying because like
you put him 14th.
Oh okay. Maybe
I don't have Dishsoap up that high. So the way that I like to evaluate players is like just based off of how I can see them in the lobby, and like. Obviously Dishsoap has like 2 very high elo accounts if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. He has Dishsoap and Dishsoap 2, so in terms of like ladder performance is quite nice. I don't have him up that high because I just don't really feel the pressure coming out of Dishsoap as I would like certain other players at points in the game. Which is like kind of, it doesn't really sound like that great of a justification because like it's not anything really concrete, but it's more so like you
don't have the fear
yeah yet. How scared do you have to be when you load into a lobby with a specific player, right?
Okay
and it's like the amount that you can streak for, the amount that you can damage players for, the amount that sort of you hit your strong point in the game. How much do you have to be afraid of that player? And I don't know. It might just be because I'm not paying enough attention, and maybe because Dishsoap has 2 accounts, so that I can't tell the difference. You know, Dishsoap and Dishsoap 2 might register as completely different accounts in my subconscious mind.
Dishsoap sucks, but
Dishsoap 2, if that Dishsoap 2 player gets on,
the sequel,
oh, you guys are in trouble. But yeah, that's just part that. It does sound like sort of like an arbitrary reasoning, but you know, like for example, I'll give a good example of it. It's like, you know, you see Robin like right now show up in your lobby, right? Like if he's playing on point, you're kind of like, oh no. And then you see like, oh, all through stage 2 and stage 3, oh, he's full streaking. Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh god. Please let me be strong in the late game. Oh no. You know, when that stuff happens, like that's when it sort of registers in like my mind that this is a player that I have to sort of like, you know, think about and sort of be afraid of, you know. And I think it might just not have happened enough with Dishsoap to the point where like I feel that yet. Obviously, you know, I could be missing things. It's sort of like a very arbitrary way of looking at it, but
no, I like it. The visualization that I would use is what it's like spirit pressure in anime, if that makes sense. It's just
like if you've watched Bleach, you know, like...
you just get it. You just like there's like a gravitas to the way the player imposes themselves in the lobby.
Yeah. It's something you gotta be there to really feel it out, you know.
Yes, that's right. And hence the name of the podcast. If you don't know what we're talking about, then you really just don't know, and you just have to put yourself in situations. And I think a lot of players, you know, who are like, you know, even in that low challenger lobby, they talk about it all the time. I see on the forums. It's like when I get into a good lobby of challenger players versus just like the people who happen to stumble into challenger because they just kept beating people in GM. It's completely different. The environment, the pressure, it just feels like you're in a complete, like you're just lost a lot of times. And I think that's kind of what Ramkev's pointing at. It's like he doesn't get that intimidation factor from Dishsoap quite yet, but maybe his mind has been separating Dishsoap point and Dishsoap.
This is why I'll never understand that there is still a large camp of people that think ladder equals tournaments. Like what the like? How can that be your opinion if you also feel different pressure in a lobby where you get with a whole bunch of the top 20 players versus when you're in just a random ladder lobby with challenger players? And everyone says exactly what Dan just said. They all feel different pressure when there's that many good players because people don't make mistakes in the same way. Right? If you're low rolling early, but you're one of the best, then you know how to get strong in stage 3. But a lower tier challenger player doesn't necessarily do that. Will make a mistake of thinking that they're fine when they're not. So the pressure is just so much more consistent throughout. So I just thought, no matter how many times I hear the arguments on that side of the fence, I'm just completely unpersuaded. And I feel like there's a ton of data that things that they do believe that completely contradict their worldview as it relates to the relevancy of tournaments versus ladder.
Yeah, I mean, like you can sort of tell from the field in tournaments, right? You know, in ladder, I'll say this: the moment that you see somebody take Tiny Titans as their first augment,
thumbs down.
It's all on the crap, right? But like before, like until then, you know, you'll see that like all the time on ladder, right? People will take Tiny Titans, and I'll just be like, okay. This guy has just given me a free placement because there is no way you should ever take Tiny Titan's first augment. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, I can say all I want about like the tourney formats, etc., but like it's about the level of players, right? Mm-hmm. And when the level of players are like that at that level, it sort of changes the dynamic a lot, right? Like, you know, things like valuing win streak versus lose streak actually changes, and I've been thinking about this a lot, and this is sort of why I think that, like, for example, Milk is such a good player, is because, you know, in tourney, if you're sort of reliant on that sort of win streak play style, and this is partially why, like, I think Goose is not as great in tourney, right? It's sort of like when you're reliant on that strategy and that strategy alone, it's not always gonna work out for you, right? Because there's no way that you're gonna be able to navigate the early game in such a way where you're win streaking every game. It's just not it's not really possible if everybody's trying to do that same thing, right? And when that happens, it really like doing things like greeting, doing things like even things like full open forwarding, right? If somebody sees you full open porting, I'm sure that there are like a lot of high caliber players that'll just be like, and this happens, right? This happens in tournament. They'll open fort just to screw with your open fort.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah,
they should. They should be.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and it happens in China and Korea all the time. Yeah. They like full on sell everything every time.
They're like,
yeah, their race to the bottom. Their race to the bottom in board strength sometimes is wild to watch. Yeah. They're like putting boards that seem like they're okay, and they're last minute selling certain units and not other units, and you don't know exactly how weak they're gonna be until right before the round. It's a joy to watch.
Yeah, I've seen them like have a 2-star, and they in their shop they 2-star, put on the board like, okay, now I'm gonna start streaking or whatever, sell that 2-star unit, and then just continue the streak.
Like, this is not stuff that will happen on ladder, right? Like, in set 4 Worlds, legitimately, I had that one fortune game, right? And the one of the Korean players, I'm pretty sure it was SC, just, like, sold board and went 8th. But they sold board, and they sent me bot 4 as well. And, like, people are not going to do that on ladder. And here's the thing, like, if ladder was just, you queue, and you play with the top 30 ladder players every single game, it would be a completely different story, right? Of course. It would be like such a different story, but that's not the case. And more often than not, it's gonna be like 2 to 3 top 20 players, right? And everybody else is there. And like I had this one game where I was playing with my friend who's also in Challenger, and I was just like, there are 3 Ashe players in this lobby, including myself. I'm gonna stick to playing Ashe, and I'm gonna go first this game because I'm pretty sure I don't have to be scared at all. And I stuck to playing Ashe, and I went first. and that's I played like Ashe 2. All the Ashe players top forward, by the way.
That unit was broken. Yeah. Ashe 2 was way too strong.
I want to read Ramkev's tweet from March 2nd. PSA: if I am contesting you in the lobby, I will not pivot. I do not care how much you play the comp or how many Reddit guides you have read. I will play it better than you. You will go 8th, and I will go 7th. You have been warned.
Yeah. We want to talk about Nico outplacing me in the final lobby of that day. I'm pretty sure
that's right.
I'm pretty sure it's because he high rolled double trouble. It has nothing to do with the other stuff. But and all jokes.
He was a high roller. You saw him take. You saw him take the threes company and then hit the MF, right?
Respect. Okay, I feel we should talk about Aesah and Pawnup quickly because they're both new to the list.
Okay. Aesah, my read on Aesah right now is I think he's a little lost relative to where he was in set 6. At the end of set 6, Aesah felt like he had a really good beat, but specifically on the AP tree in a pretty profound way. I think that he had actually a significant edge. The only person that I felt even more confident in was Ramblinnn in the AP tree. Except Aesah was even more dedicated to it because he had like all these mutant outs that I wasn't really considering. This set, I just don't get that same vibe. I feel like Aesah does have a good, like, very respectable amount of ability, but it just doesn't feel like he has the same, like, hubris about it, or the same kind of intimidation factor. What's your read on Aesah right now, Ramkev?
Yeah, I mean, I think Aesah's still a strong player, but yeah, I think, didn't Aesah self-proclaim in set 6 that he's, like, a mutant one-trick, right? And that's the thing with being like a comp specialist, I would say, is that it's not very robust to how a set changes over time. Because your comp could be good one day, but the moment that Mortdog notices it, the moment that it gets on his radar and he's like, oh, this is performing too well. We gotta do a little bit of something, right? And the moment that happens, you're done for, right?
You're
Like,
done.
You need to be in the sweet spot, right? You need to be not weak, because if it's weak, what are we doing here? But not so strong that it gets nerfed or that it's super contested. Either one of those is like really problematic.
Right.
Aesah's performance in tournaments got worse as more people started playing innovators last set. He was an AP leaning player, but really strongly leaning towards the innovator tree. He was the best innovator player on the ladder by a fairly wide margin. He had figured out nuances to the tree that no one else had. I don't think Aesah belongs in the top 15 right now, but I am very clear on the fact that if he keeps playing for real, then Aesah will not only deserve to be on this list, but he will very likely break in the top 10. He has the right work ethic for it. He has the right mentality and approach. His self-identification of his weaknesses is so good, which is a skill that very few people on this list have, by the way. But I was watching a stream earlier today, and he was just talking about he's on an opening, it's like 2-5, and he's like, it's a striker game. And then he was like, man, I keep playing strikers. I do this thing where I like start playing a comp and then I see everything through the lens of that comp, and so I go to that comp in situations where I probably shouldn't. And I agree. I think he's too narrow. But he's just at a different stage of his journey. I mean, Goobums is sixth on the list and seriously is in the conversation for one of the best players in North America right now for the first time. And he went through a journey of being a one-trick too, where he was like the best RE player, the best Talon player, the best Keepers player, and he showed his potential in his mastery of those trees, and now he's putting it together in a more flexible style, and he's absolutely belongs in this conversation as one of the best players. And I think Aesah's just on an earlier stage of that journey, and he happened to pop off very consistently in tournaments because the conditions were aligning for him. It was a comp that people weren't playing that much of. He was really good at it. It was strong in the meta. And so people overrate Aesah's current skill level because of his tournament results.
Whew. Okay, all right. We don't have that much more time to talk about Pawnup. I still also am gathering my intel on Pawnup, so I kind of want to go to you, Bryce. You studied probably the most Pawnup out of all three of us. What's your thoughts on Pawnup?
I think he's solid. I watched all of his games of day 1 of Inno Cup and half of his games of day 2, and then day 3 I did not go back and study VODs, but we casted half the lobbies and watched the others, so I feel like I had a good sense. I think that he had a good. I really like the fact that he made adjustments going. He was a 4-cost flexible reroller. Day 1 of the tournament he played mostly 3-cost reroll. And I really liked that adjustment. And then he actually adjusted further as the tournament went on. As more and more people started leaning towards reroll, he actually went back more towards his traditional style. So I love that he shows the flexibility, the range of being able to play across both those things. I think that's a hallmark of a great TFT player. I will say that there was nothing particularly inspirational in my study of Pawnup. He wasn't doing anything where I was like, wow, that's wild, or like really impressive, or great recognition, or super cool nuanced positioning decision. So it's hard. It's not that much data for me to collect, right? It's just 9 games, but I think that he belongs on this list, right? He was actually, I put him 13th. I think he's like right around that range. If he high rolls, he's absolutely capable of making the final day or even making worlds if he high rolls, because I think he's solid enough player to be able to make use of what the game is giving him, but he's not a serious threat right now in my eyes to be breaking into like the upper echelon of players.
Okay, Ramkev, you agree with that assessment?
I think I don't know enough about Pawnup.
All right, fair enough. I think that was basically my sentiment as well. But at the same time, we have some players on this list that also do something similar to that. Like I think of Robin as being like the mastered form of that. Yep. Robin he doesn't really inspire me too often with his play, but I also see him making very grounded, solid decisions. And I don't really see Robin making that many big mistakes. And I think that in itself can be a strength. The lack of a weakness, right? And not necessarily having an outstanding advantage over others. But we'll see. Time will tell. Maybe Pawnup drops off. Maybe he ends up being the world champion. Good luck to him in regionals. But that does it. I want to say that was the best rankings discussions we've had yet. Very clean and cut. A little bit less meme. Maybe because Milk was insistent on being Milk last episode, but that was
it's a guest diff.
It's a guest gap. Let's go to stage 4, our fourth segment, which is reportable. It's basically the last big part of the show, where we're going to ask our guests to grade 3 players of their choice based off the skill set that we sent them in a report card. This is Bryce's segment, so Bryce, go ahead and take it away.
Okay, I'm really excited because one, I love talking about TFT with Ramkev, and two, our first two guests were people who refused to read the fill out the report card in advance, read the report card. We're arguing about whether or not something belongs on the report card in real time. So this will be the first time we get to do this segment, like a deep analysis version of it. So we're gonna do the report cards for Ramkev's gonna do himself. He's gonna do SpicyAppies. Is gonna do Goose. So Ramkev, the way that we've done this historically is we go category by category, and then you rate each of them in the category. All of these are, well, almost all of these are 1 out of 10s. The exceptions are two of the ones at the very top. So playstyle is a description, right? So it's just like capture their playstyle, describe it simply as you can. Preparation is 1 out of 10, and then flexibility we do on a scale of 1 to 20. The idea being the least flexible player is a 20 because they're 20 out of 20x. Right.
Okay.
So like
it doesn't count. It doesn't count
to
their points.
Yeah, it doesn't count towards their points. The opening salvo, the style is more like a conversational thing, and then we'll actually be reporting.
Okay. Oh, because I actually went to check to see like how that flexibility. I thought 20 out of 20 was like fully flexible.
Yeah, it's fine. You can just go the other way.
Also,
it's Milk,
like 20 different games played of 20 different comps.
Before we get into this, can we just reflect on the fact that Milk is saying not 1 out of 15? They changed it to 1 out of 10. Milk, you changed it to 1 out of 15 on the fly last time, bro.
You asked us to change
the criteria.
Last time we did 1 to 10. Because it was supposed to be a sliding scale of power indication, and we did 1 to 15.
I should not have looked at that VOD.
No, you didn't want to.
It's all right. I'm good at math. I can.
Yeah, it's fine. It's
okay.
Round. You'll be fine. Okay, so playstyle. How would you describe your own playstyle?
Okay, this was hardest for me because like I have no idea. I just do whatever. So. I would actually, as much as people say flex, I would put myself down as like actually what I consider to be flexible. Because I think that flex is a buzzword that people use to describe a playstyle that I think is actually really rigid, and it's not actually flex. Because, a lot of people will say, okay, flex is you play strong items, you put the strong items on your early game units, and then you go to level 8, and then you put your items on a 4-cost unit, and you play your 4-cost frontline, and your 5-cost frontline, and your 5-cost utility. Boom, flex. I do the same game every day, same thing every game. I'm flexible, right? And that's not the way that I see it. I try to do every single unit, every single comp, every single play style.
I am so happy right now.
This is exactly what Bryce wants to hear.
This is exactly how I want to talk about this stuff, and you're completely you're completely right. You're one of the only true flex players, because true flex doesn't just mean trying to play a fluid board state throughout the game. It also includes stylistic flexibility, and you are very happy rolling, re-rolling 1 costs. Sometimes you hyper roll them, sometimes you slow roll them, sometimes you roll super deep in stage 3, sometimes you roll super deep in stage 4, sometimes you roll a little bit and evaluate and roll more 2 turns later. You're playing around every possible carry. You're holding items sometimes when you think it's correct. You're slamming some items sometimes when you think it's correct. It's I call you just like full open. I like actual flex. That's the description. And there are very few players that actually do that. So, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so you like actually flex. All right, I like it.
Actual flex.
It's
fucking great.
Flex. All right. Well, that was good. Good start.
And then I think for Appies, Appies is actually, I think out of like a lot of the ladder players, Appies is quite close in terms of like similarity to how I play. I think that Appies is strong with like every comp usually. There are certain he tends to have a more early game focus. We can get into that later, but I don't exactly know what the words for that is. But he also sort of likes certain comps. He starts to lean towards certain things, like, for example, last set he was really you know, he could play anything, but I do think he sort of had
reroll.
preferences, I would say. Reroll, of course.
That was what he loved the
I
most.
think he really liked playing Arcanist, right?
Yep. He was an outstanding mutants player.
Yeah, yeah. And so that's sort of like how I would say it is like, you know, if you have your sort of flex, but you aim to really
Like
go towards
specialist.
things that you like.
So he's like a specialist
Yeah.
flex.
I like that.
Yeah.
Flex specialist. Yeah, you start with every out in the game. He doesn't quite start with every out in the game, although some games he does, right? Some games he happens upon, like he like the Gnar game, I'm pretty sure, because I watched this game twice now. I'm pretty sure what's happening is he's like going through like what are all of the outs that you can play from my board state and with the items that I've slammed. And he was like, fuck it. I came up with nothing. Gnar it is. Right? Like it makes sense in my head, right? It works. I have a blue buff. Gnar uses blue buff well. I have a BT, uses BT well. It's the unit that I have on my board. Let's just fucking roll with it and see what happens, basically. And it worked. But yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And then Goose is interesting. I think he's sort of like the epitome of like a just how should I say it? It's like a strong board, basically. Not in the sense it's really more of an early focus. I feel like that's sort of what players might have when they sort of have this idea of flex, right? Because he's really the embodiment of that. It's really like you slam items, right? And you don't really worry about like what those items are going to end up being, really. But like you slam strong items, you have a strong early board. It doesn't really matter what sort of like how those items end up interacting a lot of the times. But you know, they're good items, and that's how I would sort of, and like you play strong units, and this is sort of how it ends up going. It's very like, you know, I think his comfort zone is when he's like in the top 2 in the lobby in health like the entire time, right?
Yes. I wrote best board. I think that summarizes it. Okay. Preparations. Oh, sorry, Bryce. This is yours.
No, you'll always be the better host. So I never.
No. This is your thing. This is your thing. Go ahead.
Okay, so preparation 1 out of 10.
Prep.
This is tourney prep specifically.
Or it could be a description of a word. How do you prepare for events?
Yeah, oh, that's right. You did that. That's right. You did. Yeah, like describe. Like he was like lol chess or something.
I mean, so my tourney prep is somewhat interesting. Because I like to do a whole bunch of things. I like to like look up people's lol chess. I like to think about what comps I can play. A lot of it is just sort of mentality prep and saying like focusing on. Yeah, I don't really know. It's just a bunch of ladder games. You can just say just a bunch of games.
I think a lot of people do that for what it's worth, play a bunch of ladder games, but you actually ladder to learn, right? Like you actually are like, okay, I need to, you like file away the information in your head. You try to do a million different things. You're like, that works, that doesn't. You get a, be in your bonnet about a certain carry and you try to play that carry as many times as you can and pay close attention to what's working and why it's working. There are a ton of people who just play games and like, they figure it out or they don't. They learn something off of the game somewhat intuitively, but it's not like an intentional style of learning because they're still trying to like win and climb LP, whereas you don't give a shit.
Yeah.
like you couldn't care less about your LP.
Yeah. And then Appies has said this multiple times, right? Appies likes to do VOD reviews. So like looking over other people's VODs, seeing what he can get out of that, right? And Goose is difficult. Mostly because I haven't really talked to him about this at all. I assume, like, one thing I do know is that he does like to look at stats a lot. So Goose is probably the, maybe founding father of looking at, item stats, unit stats. And I guess now we have augment stats as well, right? But other than that, like, I assume, like, playing games is, but... anything behind the scenes, I have no idea of what's going on there.
Okay.
I'm down to describe Goose as a data head.
Yeah.
we can just put him as Nerdge.
Perfect. Okay, flexibility. 20 being least flexible, 1 being most flexible.
Okay. I would actually give myself a 20 out of 20 on this one.
No, a 1. A 1.
A 1 out of 20. Right. That's right. That's right. A 1 out of 20. And then yeah, Appies is close, but I do think cuz like, there are things that Appies cannot play, and I know that he can't play it, and he knows that he can't play it. For example, like mercenaries, right?
Oh, that's right. Oh, just as a small aside, it took everything in my power not to try and directly flame him when we were watching him do his murder cash out, because just the moment he slammed Shojin, I said, "What are you doing?"
That's one of the things, right? Like for me, like when I think about, because whenever I describe mercs, I'm like, oh yeah, bro, this is like the most brain dead thing that you can do. I turn brain off, do whatever, and like now that like the more like this is one of the more you think about it, and the more you like hear about other player perspectives, that's when you realize, okay, maybe not everybody thinks about it the same way that you do. So like, for like I think that Appy's like range of play is still very wide. So I mean, I would either give him like a 2 or a 3, maybe like 2.5. In terms of like comps played, right? It's very, very wide, right?
Okay. And how about Goose?
Goose is interesting because I think that there's still times when I see Goose's boards and I actually would not be able to see how I myself would end up there. But there are some things that he's not able to play, and some styles that he's not able to play. So, but he's still like a very flexible player, like in terms of like the units that he plays around, like what goes on the board in the end game. Sometimes he'll end up with, some weird, like really weird boards, right? I'd probably give him a 4 though. Yeah.
Okay. So some pretty flexible players we got here.
Yeah.
I specifically chose this set of players because like,
I was gonna say it's a very interesting dynamic that all 3 guests on the show so far have clearly chosen players that they respect for certain things specifically, right? And they tend to be more stylistically aligned. Like last week when Milk was doing it, or not last week, last episode when Milk was doing it, it was like the least flexible set of play, like flex players, right? Like the greed stats are like all omega off of like the econ management, like off the charts.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So now we're into the now we're into the like 1 through 10, 10 being the best. So if you think this is a comparison of them to a 1K LP player, Ramkev. So 1K is like 40th on the ladder. So the idea is that we want to capture someone who's like clearly not like the best player of the game, but is very good at the game.
Is 1K like a 1?
No, 1K is a 5.
It's a 5.
1K is a 5.
Okay.
So they perform below average to an average player.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like a 1K player like is solid at the early game, right? They're not a god, but they're like capable of playing the early game pretty well and challenge room.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. Okay. Yeah, in early game so this is the one where I rated myself the lowest. Oh, I rated myself pretty low on some of these. So early game, I would probably put down as like a 7, maybe. Okay. And that's more like a lot of this is sort of like my own decision because sometimes I'll choose to sack the early game. Oh my goodness. Oh yeah.
To be clear, this is not just about HP preservation, right? This is a holistic approach to the early game. So I don't think someone can get a 10 if they're only capable of win streaking. Even if they're a sick best board player and they're like preserve the most HP they possibly can, they're missing opportunities to play lost streak.
I see. Yeah.
So if you're like tactically playing lost streak, that doesn't ding you.
That might force me to reevaluate. Let's just keep myself at 7, I guess. Because there's some. This is mostly when I play on ladder though. Is like sometimes I just slam random items. And then I'll end up being like, oh, this was a really bad idea.
Been there, man. That was actually me today.
It doesn't really happen too much in tournament because I can sort of like convince myself not to do it, but you know, on average, it's not a good look. Yeah, and then Appies I would probably rate like what is this number? Probably like a 9. I think Appies is a really strong early game, and he also has like sort of this idea of where he wants to go with it, right? And then Goose, I had him down as 10 out of 10.
Okay.
And honestly,
I
still think I have him down like even after changing the criteria around. I feel like I still have him down as a 10 out of 10. Like the items you select, like you can still have some wiggle room in the early game where you come into it and you go into the late game. But like, I think that a lot of the times his early game is like so good in certain games where it's just like, it's kind of gross. But you know, that obviously comes at the cost. A lot like with late game scaling for sure. But yeah.
Okay. Got it.
All right, mid game.
Mid game.
And it's nice that we actually have a mid game now, right? The previous podcast, people were like, "What is this?" Like, we play the mid game now.
Mid game, I assume, is like round 3-ish to like mid round 4, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
So mid game, you know, I would sort of have myself. I actually rated myself low for all of these game parts, just because I feel like I'm liable to make like really dumb decisions at like every point in the game. So I put that like 7 again. Yeah, 7.
7's pretty good. It's a solid score. It means that you're
I mean,
good.
I would say I think that in most of these categories, all 3 of these players are probably better than 1K LP players by like a significant margin.
Yep.
I hope so.
So they're gonna be over 5 for most of them. But yeah, Abby's mid game. I think Abby's mid game is pretty cracked because he knows how to like bring back from like the low roll spot, right? I would honestly give him like a 10 probably here. Because like he knows when to sort of really like turn it around. The way that I see it is like things like doing like if you're low rolling really hard, right? One of the important skills is like seeing the outs that you can hit on 3-2. And I would put myself higher on this number if I weren't so non-confident in my ability to not troll. But yeah, this is like, you know, if you're disciplined, you do like a mid-game roll down, you can restabilize your board and it's sort of like you know, bring it back, right? I think that's a very important skill to have. And so for Goose, you know, that's really, I think where it comes back to bite him, I say, is when it comes down and around here, because he actually doesn't roll too much on 3-2, I think. He sort of uses like the strength that he has in the early game to move on to later points of the game, right? So maybe I would put him at a 7, same as myself. It's sort of like, but that's more so not less because he's trolling, but more so about the play style.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that looks about right.
Okay. Dig it.
That's cool.
Okay, late game.
Late game, I give myself a 7 again. I just think I'm just bad at all points in the game. It's not pretty.
This guy thinks he's the best TFT player in North America. To give himself 7 early, middle, and late.
It's actually
where's the edge?
It's too difficult to notch. Like, I would say like if we were to do this like on a, if I were really feeling it, you know, I might give myself 10s in all of these categories, but you know, you have to really be feeling it, you know.
Sure.
Late game, Appies. I don't know about maybe like an 8, because I think there are players that are really, really, really good at capping out late game boards, and I don't think Appies is like there.
Who tops your list out of curiosity?
Honestly, probably. I mean, Soju is like the poster child, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think.
Assuming he lives to that point, yes.
Yeah, Kiyun is also really good at this, I think. Milk as well. Like, you know, the three that were on last time.
Yes,
they're all
the
really
Stooges.
really good at
that's all they talk
capping
about.
the late
That's
game
all they
board.
talk
Yeah.
about. That's
Late
all
game
they
board.
they
like,
just
how
sit in a
strong
Discord
can
call.
your final board get?
They just sit in a Discord call and they just keep constantly trying to talk about how they can cap higher. That's all.
Yeah, for sure. Milk, like when Milk was playing a super high roll hex tech game, and he's like staring at his board over and over again earlier today, and he's just like, "How do I make this board better? Hex tech sucks. You can't like make the board top 1, like." And so just like, I don't understand. Like, you just get your top 4 and get out. He's like, yeah, fuck that. Like, this board sucks. Like, I should be able to uncap this thing and like, you know, play a whole bunch of other like better units. He just like can't understand why this composition like is not capable of top 1.
He got second, and he's like, this comp sucks.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, and I think that's the reason why I would put myself low in all of these categories, because I think you know the when you're playing in like low, like, I'm not saying like low elo as in like I'm saying like low elo, like silverish.
Okay.
You know how those players are sort of inclined to just reroll random stuff and like go for the big synergies and do that's, I think, like, for myself as a player, that's sometimes a problem, because I'm like the upgraded version of that, right? Like, I can still play the game, but I still like to like go for the meme synergies.
Right. You see
Too
the
much of a troll.
Allawi. You see the Allawi 3. You see the Allawi 3.
Yeah, like you see the like. And it's fun something. Like, you know, I still want to play like Dark Star Silco. It's never gonna happen. I've done it already. It's bad.
I did it today. It's bad. It's so bad. I think I legit didn't top 4 because of that. I was so upset.
But like, if I had the opportunity to do that, I would still probably do it. And it's like, you know, sometimes it's not great.
Yeah,
it's not great. Goose, I would actually rate pretty high in this category. I would say, you know, I would actually give him it's hard to say because sometimes his items are actually just full scuffed. But like, I actually think like in terms of his unit prioritization and like what he looks for, he's actually better than both me and Appies in this category. So I would actually give him a 9. Because if it weren't for the scuffed items, like the units on the board and like the quality of the board is definitely like really, really good when you look at it at the end, right?
He makes the best with the situation that he has every time.
Right. That's how he's able to get first on ladder, because
he sees the combinations of units that work well together, and he thinks of them as like little pockets, and he's able to like mix and match them and understand a board intuitively that like has enough frontline and enough backline. It's impressive.
Yeah. Okay, let's see.
All right, so these next, you can kind of like rattle through them because they're just kind of meta dependent, but also
this is meta dependent. I actually say like for AD proficiency, I mean AD and AP, I would give myself 9s.
Okay.
Just because I personally think that I have a decent grasp of all of the units and all of the comps, and I'm willing to play them. So I might be wrong here. Because I can't tell myself which one of these I prefer. Yeah, I really can't. But I would like to say that I'm decent at both of them. So
I agree.
Yeah. And then Appies, I think I could be wrong. I might be wrong. I might not have watched enough Appies recently to have a fully educated opinion on this. Let me. What did I write down here? I can't figure out where these numbers are coming from. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, Appies AD proficiency. I feel like I just see Appies play more AP than AD. Is why I might.
He does.
Yeah. But that's not to say that he can't play AD. Maybe like an 8 for AD and 10 for AP. because he can play AD, right? It's like, you know, and obviously this is all dependent on like what he like. I think for set 6 specifically, right?
Right.
And then
Okay.
Goose. I don't even know if Goose thinks about AD or AP like that. I have, like, now that I think about it more, because, like, you know, sometimes Goose just slams the AD, AP items
At the
as
same
they
time.
are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, question mark?
You can get him with question mark. That's fine.
Like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. This one's actually kind of hard. Yeah. And then reroll proficiency, I would give myself actually a 10 on this cat.
I would hope so. If there's one category I'm
Yeah.
confident giving you a 10, it's this one.
I agree.
I think that I don't know if I would put my yeah, I would. You know, there was a time in set 4 where I was legitimately incapable of bot 4ing if you gave me a 1-cost reroll. So like back when Nami and Wukong and what's it called?
Zaya.
Zaya,
That's set 3,
yeah,
that was
yeah.
set
I
3.
mean, like,
Oh,
Zaya
Zaya
was
was
set
3?
3, but like,
Yeah.
you know,
Okay.
I have like a, I really get pumped when I get to play a 1-cost reroll, like, but like all of the other rerolls I'm perfectly capable of playing, like, you know, Nocturne back in set 5. I actually think I didn't actually play it that much in tournaments, but I actually think that I was probably like one of the best people on the server at playing that comp. You know, Shaco in set 6, a whole bunch of other rerolls, and the thing is, like, I'm perfectly okay with playing those, and you know,
Okay.
if anybody, like, the first guy that I released on Reddit was like some random like 1-cost, or not the first, but the second guy was like how to play 1-cost reroll. So I definitely just like think about it a lot, like a lot, probably more than most players do.
And this man still hates Nubao for selling an Udyr 3, so.
Yeah, he actually sold Udyr 3. It's crazy. Imagine. Oh, and Udyr 3 and Warwick. Oh my goodness, I'm just thinking about those units right now.
All right.
Oh.
Let's send it back in. We're not here to talk about every reroll that Ramkev's fallen in love with.
Okay, Appy's reroll capability.
Triple Archangel's Warwick from set 5. Yes.
Appy's reroll capability. I think Appy's reroll capability is pretty high. Maybe 9. I think there are some reroll comp, like he will play a lot of like very interesting reroll comps, right? Like the Vi reroll, Brand reroll, Quinn, another one, right? Quinn, a lot of interesting reroll comps along with your standard ones. There are some that I think he's not as proficient in, like, you know, for example, one of the very Kevin gonna love the. I'm sorry, I'm reading chat. Kevin gonna love the new True Justice Caitlyn reroll comp. I actually played that comp before the buff. I played that comp the first patch. It's really good, by the way.
It's not bad. True Justice is actually pretty good.
50%. I got a first, so you know it's the truth, as some of the kids would say. But yeah, back on topic. yeah. I think like there are some comps that Appies has not that comfortable playing. Specifically, you know, from this set, it would be like Twitch reroll. So you know, there are some that he might not be comfortable with. But like the ones that he does play, he does really well, right?
I think Goose gets a -10.
Goose.
If they could give negative points, we would, right?
Goose is interesting. I think that, yeah, basically Goose would be like a 1 here. The way that I would say it is, Goose is capable of playing 3-star units.
Yep.
But he is not one to re-roll them, right? Like, I've seen Goose play 3-star Twitch before with like RFC, Hurricane, Last Whisper, but it's not a unit that he rolled at all. You know,
Yeah.
it's more like,
he puts a
oh, I
2-star
got
copy
9
of it.
twitches.
Yeah, he puts a 2-star copy on his board and he carries it, and then he winds up getting randomly another 2-star copy of it. It's like, well, I'll play 2 of them on my board and see what happens.
Yeah.
And then he gets naturals a couple more of them. He's like, all right, well, I'm not selling this. I'm just gonna play around it, I guess.
And that's more of because like he's not really like when you think about your re-rolling, right? It's like legitimately, I have like 3 copies of this unit. I'm not that close, but I'm just gonna commit to doing that. He is not somebody who does that. You know, even I don't know if anybody remembers this, but Goose actually played a decent amount of Zed in set 4. Back
I remember this.
But here's the thing: Zed back then was not a reroll comp because
the Spirit Zed builds.
No, the Ninja Zed build. So it was the 4 ninjas plus the cultist, right? But that was actually not a reroll comp because it was one that stabilized off of Z2, right?
Right.
So if anybody remembers, with that comp, you didn't even need 3-star Zed, and sometimes you don't even go for like the Chosen Zed. You might go for like Chosen Shin or something along those lines, but like, yeah, that wasn't really a reroll comp. So he might play with quote unquote reroll, but he's definitely not like a reroller, I would say.
Okay. Yep. I think that makes sense.
All right, we're only halfway through.
We gotta speed this up a little bit, Ramkev.
Okay, let's go.
It's good.
Okay.
We're getting
It's good stuff. It's good stuff.
Okay.
Win
all
streak
right.
proficiency. Win streak proficiency. I would say, I actually would put myself as a 10 on this for win streak proficiency, but that's just because I think when I really try to win streak, I'm probably the most committed player on ladder to doing something like that. I think that a lot of players don't really do what is necessary to keep their streak, whereas I'll do things like very aggressively leveling, very aggressively rolling to make sure that I keep streak. And I think that most players are not that proactive about it.
Okay. What about Appies?
Appies. If we're being quick, Appies probably. I think both Appies and Goose are pretty solid. I might give Appies like a 9 and Goose a 10. But this is not really considering tournament play. But just like when I watch them, like Goose is very good at like keeping streak.
It's his best attribute for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
Lost streak proficiency. I think we're all pretty bad at this. I might be the best. I give myself like an 8. And
pretty bad gives himself an 8.
Appies is, I mean, like relatively speaking, right?
Right. I think Kevin's the only one who's actually like fulfilled the assignment. Milk was giving himself like 1s on shit. It's like
I think I'm actually pretty decent at lose streaking, but not like anywhere near the levels of like, I'd say Milk is like, I put Milk on the pedestal for lose streaking.
For lose streaking.
Oh, that's so interesting. I put Spencer. I mean, I think Milk is.
Oh, Spencer. Too. Yeah. I think Milk. Yeah, I don't know.
But both are particularly.
Yeah.
I give Milk a lot of credit as a player, I would say.
Okay.
But
Appies.
Yeah. Appies. Maybe a 7.
Okay.
Appies can play lose streaks. I don't think he's as strong at it, based off of what I watched. Goose is not great at loose streaking. I would probably put him like maybe like a 3.
Yeah, he definitely is lower than a 5. Whenever he's loose streaking, he's like,
it is doomed. It is doomed.
He's like, what's happening?
Because he'll still slam the items when he's losing, you know, and that's the scary part. Because like
every time he goes win, loss, because he gets a low roll opening and he just like fights the low roll the whole time.
It's like it's not in his nature.
Yeah.
Econ management. I'm pretty bad at econ management. I would put myself at like a 2. Appies is pretty decent. I wouldn't say he's like amazing at econ management for what I've seen. Maybe I'd put him at like a 6. Goose is actually really good at econ management, so I'd probably put him at like a 9 or a 10.
9 or a 10. 9.5.
Yeah.
Okay, and game awareness / scouting.
Game awareness 0.
Wait,
0.
really?
Actually, that's not true.
Can't be true.
When I do the not reading chat thing, I would put myself at like a 10.
Okay.
What? That's so different. Can we split the difference here? What is it? 0 or 10?
Give it a 5.
All right. The math checks out.
Like, you know, if you like, the thing is, when I'm really paying attention, it's not like the things that I care about when I scout and when I position and those like when I'm really paying attention is like it's full on whether or not there's a unit difference on the board that I'm fighting. Like if I can eke out one more unit of value, and not just like one more unit of value on like if I can save health, but if I can deal like more damage, if I can do whatever. And that's something that like, I was like really good at in like set 4, for example. I think there was probably not a better player in the world at doing that than I was at that point, and I think like yeah. So there's that. Abby's, it's really awkward for me to say because I don't really watch his stream too much when he's in tourney because like, you know, a lot of times he'll be interacting with chat. It's so difficult to figure out when people are streaming whether or not. I give it a 5 because you know Abby's does not really scout on stream.
He doesn't. He's reading chat too much.
Yeah. Goose is really good at scouting. I would say I would give him like probably a 9.
Okay.
I can always tell because I'll be in game and I'll be like not paying attention and then he'll like fuck me over with his positioning. I'll be like, oh, he knew. He 100% knew.
Yeah.
Positioning. I give myself a 7 at least for right now, because I think right now I autopilot some things that I could be doing better. If it were a different set, I would probably give myself a higher rating. Abby's is pretty good at positioning. I would give him like a 8 or a 9. I actually think positioning is one thing that I think Goose has over both of us. I would actually give Goose a 10 on this.
Wow.
Interesting. Most people don't.
I think he's the best positioner on the ladder.
I think he's up there. I think he's up there.
I don't think that at all.
Wow.
I don't think
hot
that at all.
take.
I watch a lot of Goose.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it doesn't, because like I've heard him talk about some of the stuff that he does, and it's some of the stuff like I don't even think didn't register for me at least. But I could be wrong. Maybe I'm just really bad at positioning. You should move me down to like a 5.
Okay.
Roll downs and transitions. Roll downs and transitions. It's hard to say. I think when I'm on point, roll downs are here's the issue with roll downs as transitions is that like I think I'm somebody that's very susceptible to getting dizzy.
It's because you don't roll down for one thing. Like
yeah,
part of the reason why Spencer's able to roll 100 gold in one turn is because he's rolling for one thing.
Cause like when I do roll for one thing, I think that I'm up there, maybe like an 8. But when I'm like trying to think about multiple things at once, this is sort of the thing. Like one of the things in tournament I have to tell myself is to like actually focus up and not like try to think about too many things. Because when that happens, it's actually detrimental because there are too many things to think about. I'll give myself maybe like a 7. Because it's brought down by the fact that
you're too open. Yeah. I know that.
Appies transitions are good. I think probably 8. Goose. But I don't know about transition. Goose is weird because I feel like the board transition it's sort of like a slow transition. Probably.
It's the Ramblinnn approach. He's not really doing massive open cells for like 4 or 5 units. He's usually just like upgrading 1 or 2 units and putting him in.
Yeah.
He does have that in him though. Yeah. Every once in a while, He'll on a
Goose
neutral round, he'll have like an evil genius moment where he like sees a
mhm.
line.
Yeah, I think
like
Goose is quite good at this.
sweeping pivot across to something.
I'd give him a 9 maybe. I think he's actually pretty good at this. Control, I gave myself a 0.
Do you miss every Zephyr and Shroud?
No, but sometimes I'm too lazy.
I'm noticing a lot of your weaknesses have to do with whether you're locked in or not.
Yeah, I'd give myself a 4 on this. Mostly because I'm actually probably the most susceptible to getting myself Zephyred. Because I won't even know that they have a Zephyr on their board until like I get Zephyred. I'm like, oh shit. Oh no, I'm dead.
I do notice this when we're in games together, for sure.
Like, oh no, what happened? How did I lose? I think Abby's also pretty low on this because, like, if you know Abby's, he'll tell you about the no switch, the no. What is it? The no mix up, where you don't mix up.
Oh yeah, he doesn't.
But
move
he
at
does
all.
the no mix up as his primary mix up, which is, you know, when your no mix up is your first mix up, it's like the. It's kind of muggy. I tie Appies with myself.
Oh my god.
Goose is actually a lot better about this. I'd probably give him at least a 7.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Maybe, yeah.
Appies scores lower on my rubric because he's too free on carousel.
Yeah.
Fucking got him.
Let's see. Creativity. I give myself a 10 out of 10 for this one. I think that there's nobody on ladder that's more creative than I am. And this is partially because of the fact that, I'm like one of those, you know that Yu-Gi-Oh scene where Yugi says my grandpa's deck has no pathetic cards?
Yes.
That's me in TFT, like, hey, I legitimately, like, am affected when people tell me a unit sucks. I am legitimately like, you're telling me this unit, and like I will actively go out of my way to prove them wrong because my grandpa's deck has no pathetic cards.
Yeah. You're simp. You're TFT simp. That's what it is.
Yeah, I was actually talking about this earlier. I played a game this week where I played Broken Stopwatch, Clockwork Spat, Tom Kench carry.
What?
Sounds fun.
Yeah.
So TK would walk around eating people during
the Broken Stopwatch.
But who is saying TK is a bad unit? No one says TK sucks.
Oh
yeah,
no,
but no one thinks about Clockwork TK with Broken Stopwatch.
Yeah, that's true.
I've gone Oh, Tryndamere. Okay, don't talk about Tryndamere though. Tryndamere's trash. We all know it. That one, I feel like we've all played enough times and seen him do enough things where it's like, okay, you know what? I'll give you that one. Tryndamere,
I don't know why they nerfed that unit. It wasn't good when they nerfed it.
It's so sad because it's like, you know how sometimes people talk about how Veigar feeds mana to the enemy team?
Yeah.
That's actually what Tryndamere does. Except Veigar is actually super good. And Tryndamere is just
Tryndamere is like the best Double Trouble unit though.
Yeah, I think it's because his data with Double Trouble and Triforce was outrageously good, and
they
nerfed him twice, and that was unnecessary.
That's one of those things where it's like, it's not really the unit, it's definitely the augment.
Yeah, it was Triforce and Double Trouble for
sure. Because my boy Tryndamere does like 5k damage a fight at 3-star, and it's real sad, and it's so depressing, and he's not. But yeah, moving on from Appies. Appies is also very creative, 10 out of 10, super creative guy. GV8, 9 out of 10.
This is why you picked this list. This is why this.
Yeah, it is actually because of this category.
Like the most honestly, maybe even GV8 can get it. I would give him the 9 out of 10 just because it's the reroll thing.
You can't have 3 10s. It defeats.
Yeah, I can't think of Goose. Maybe even give Goose an 8 out of 10 just because I can't see Goose playing reroll AP Alawi.
Yes,
and Casper would do that. Casper would do that.
Oh,
Abby's
Casper
would
for
probably
sure.
do it. I would definitely do it. I was doing it before Casper was doing it on my Smurf account.
All right.
But I didn't play Imperial. I actually played like Socialite Alawi, which now that I think about it is probably not as good because Imperial was broken and Socialite wasn't.
Okay, form
Yeah.
consistency. This is gonna be an interesting one.
Oh, I'm just gonna give myself zeros on these because I am not in form and my mental is not existent because I am no longer participating in tournaments.
All right.
Okay.
He wants just straight up zeros. Okay.
Yeah. And I think Abby's is very in form, mental is super good. We can just give him 10s and 10. And then
Wow.
Goose, like, if there's anything that the Innovator Cup showed, is sort of like, yeah, when he's sort of reliant on something, he's not likely to be able to bounce back. I would say, come back with something on the fly. In that sense, form consistency, I would probably have to give like a 6, maybe 7. Mental, I don't know it's very difficult for me to tell what he's thinking because I feel like Goose is. I think his mental is pretty good, maybe like a 7, 8.
I never perceived tilt from him, but you're right.
Yeah,
he's
he
not
puts
a good mask. It's hard to tell exactly what's going through.
Because there's definitely some tilt there, right? You can sort of feel it. Right?
Every
player
player has that. Even the people with the
yeah.
best mental. I've seen SpicyAppies like definitely feel discouraged or nervous.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I would not give Appies a 10 on mental.
No. I think.
Okay, yeah. I mean, we could adjust that. I think I have a very positive perception of Appies. I think it's great.
I have an insanely positive perception of Appies.
That's skewing. That might be skewing what my mental thought of it. Yeah, maybe move it to a 9-ish, 8.
Yeah, I think 8 is pretty fair. He's
eight
very
is good.
inward focused. He's
I think,
got solid mental.
Yeah, I honestly think that like if I were like very, very serious, like incredibly serious, not reading chat, not like doing anything like that, I feel like my mental would be like 10. And that's just because like I actually think that when I do not get tilted by low rolls at all. Like I'll like make a show of it on stream, but like I do not get tilted by low rolls at all because it's just the probability of it, you know. And you know, the things that I get tilted by are
Twitch
reading
chat
dumb comments in Twitch chat.
Twitch
And
chat.
that's the thing, is like if I read Twitch chat, my mental goes boom, but like, you know, in a tournament, it's very easy to avoid that problem because all you have to do is you gotta click the X on OBS and suddenly chat doesn't appear. And it's so easy to keep a good
Wait, isn't this coming from the guy who like mental boomed a tournament not too long ago because you read a comment
Yay!
He didn't even have to read it live.
Like legit, I opened up chat. But like, if I'm very serious about the tournament, this is the thing. Yeah. If I'm like very, very serious about the tournament, I will like legitimately just not open up chat. Like, that's the thing, is that, you know, this is what happened like in regionals and worlds. Is like, well, obviously worlds is super easy because there is no Twitch chat. That's the best part about worlds. But like, you know, for example, I actually think the most recent example is On Cup, because I actually think my mental was very good for that tourney until I mental boomed after the tournament, because that wasn't like a mental boom during the tournament if the scores were any indication of it, right? Because I actually had a very, very low roll games that tournament, but like, you know, when you low roll, you know, the best thing that you can tell yourself is like, you just like, the TFT is about the things that you can control, right? And this is actually something that I tell myself that I think like, a lot of players do not actually do this, right? Is that you should never, ever, ever, when you're evaluating your play, think about how the RNG affected the game in any way, right? And I think I'm very good at tuning that kind of stuff out, which is great. But when you add on Twitch chat, it sort of counterbalances that, because
all they focus on.
That's all they focus on, and you read that. It's not even like the low roll stuff. When I just read dumb comments, it's just like, oh my god, man, I'm tilted. It just tilts me so much.
Yeah,
I mean, I'll tell you, yeah.
I think Aesah has best mental NA. He's my 10 on this, and I think it's the poker background. No poker player is results oriented.
Yeah,
at all.
Yeah, that's the phrase, right? Results oriented is what it comes down to, right? That's the thing with poker players. And I actually learned this from like one of my friends, right? Because back when I was in school, one of my friends was very big into poker, right? And we had this whole meme about being results oriented, right? And if you come from any kind of like stats background, if you come from poker, you sort of come to realize that probability is just it's just the fact of life. You live with it, you can't control it, and you move on to the next thing, right? And there's the opposite of the spectrum, right? Because like a lot of TFT players are like big on the low roll into tilt into its doomed angle, right?
TFT is also super results oriented just as a community. Like there's this deep irony of, I think Aesah is overvalued as a player because of his results, but he's probably the least results oriented player in the scene. So I think he has actually like a very good handle on his own strengths and weaknesses, and I don't think he would put himself like in the top 10, but he's on the journey, he's on the path to get there. He understands what he needs to do. But as a community, we're way, way, way too obsessed with results, LP results, individual game results, individual tournament results. It's crazy how much people will extrapolate from that without watching the games and making a decision for themselves.
Well, it's the easiest for them to understand what's happening, right? Because everything else is just very complex, and it's the easiest way for them to draw conclusions from, because that's just the data that they're working with. And also, that's part of the fun of it, right? Because people like having to jump to conclusions and having knee-jerk reactions, etc. So I think that's part of it.
Okay, we have to tie a bow on this segment because we have to tie a bow on the show. We're already 20 minutes over. I have to ask. So by the numbers, Appies is far and away the best player, even if you don't give yourself zeros for form, consistent, and mental, which is obviously hurting your scores if you give yourself like actual scores there. Appies is still the highest scorer. Do you think that's fair evaluation? Is there something missing in the report card that like is hurting Appies that we're not talking about?
I think it actually comes down to this flexibility thing.
Makes sense.
And this is, I don't know if it sounds fair to say this, but like the Mercs thing, right? We all know the Mercs thing, but it's actually pretty big.
It's a big deal.
It's a big deal. Because being able to do something like that, that will take a lot of games that could be like a bot 4 straight to a first, right? And over a large sample size, it's actually quite significant if you can do that, versus if you can't. I think that, for example, GV8 is another player that is not capable of playing Mercs in the conventional way. Like Blue Streak Mercs, I think he's very, very uncomfortable playing that way, right? Goose also has 2 questions. I forgot
about the question marks. That's so true.
He would be pretty close to Appies if we got rid of the question
marks. But okay, I'm really glad that you brought this point, actually, because the original version of the report card flexibility was part of the base report card. And then we got into this argument with both Socks and Milk about whether or not it's actually an advantage and how to think about that.
The way that I actually think of flexibility is probably the most important thing here.
Yeah, it's variance reduction.
Because like outside of like the conventional idea, like flexibility is sort of how you reduce variance. Is the way that I like to think about it.
Yep.
Because if you're fully open and you're fully willing to play everything, then you don't low roll, right? Or you can very easily limit the amount that you low roll by. And so that's the thing, like especially in a tournament format, right? Like in a tournament format where everybody's playing very strong, if you come in with like a single game plan, if you come in with a single style, it's actually pretty detrimental in a lot of it's sort of like, you know, with balancing, you know, obviously some strategies are going to be OP, some strategies are going to win out. But like, you know, and even like a fairly balanced game where there are like, you know, even not that many, let's say 5 viable strategies, the more flexible you are, the better you're going to come out, in my opinion, because you don't hit something, you go somewhere else, right? You sort of, because it's very difficult not to hit like 2 different things or like 3 different things, right?
Yeah.
Or like, and in that sense, I think it's actually pretty huge, especially like when you're playing against better players. I think it actually comes in a little bit more, it gains a little bit more importance. So that might be where it comes out. Because I still think I'm the most flexible player in like the entire server by far. But that would just like might be me tooting my own horn.
No, I think it's
partially why we have you on the show, I think.
Yeah, totally. Okay, we're at the end of Reportable. Kevin, thank you for doing it in advance. It made it so fun to actually go through because you clearly thought about all this different stuff. It made a really interesting conversation. I enjoyed it immensely.
Yes, thank you very much, Bryce. Let's go ahead and talk about some announcements. So the first thing that everyone, of course, is looking forward to is... Wait, this is not supposed to be it. It's supposed to be Challenger Series this weekend. Okay, well, this first graphic, imagine it said Challenger Series this weekend. Where we have
regional finals
players.
with Challenger Series.
Yeah. The regional finals / Challenger Series. Challenger Series is the last opportunity for people to qualify if you're not already on the snapshot for the top 2. And that will be leading up to the regional final that's happening in 2 weeks, which leads us to our second announcement, which is we're going to do another episode in 2 weeks. The day before regionals, featuring Cloud9's K3 Soju and another 4th guest. I believe that is what we're going to be doing because Soju is very insistent that he is going to qualify for regionals 1. So this weekend you better watch the Challenger Series because he says it's guaranteed that he's qualified for regionals.
Where have I heard that?
And that he will tweet before the tournament. And then two, that he is going to have the best episode of DTIYDK yet. So we'll see if he can live up to either of that hype.
I feel like every time Soju tweets, I love every time he tweets before a tournament because it always blows up in his face.
Every time.
Every time, it's so like before Innovation Cup. I remember Froda, did you tweet? Were you the one that tweeted out? I was like, I think Soju's gonna kill it this tourney, and he's like, as long as he doesn't tweet, I forget who tweeted that out. And then Soju like immediately.
It was Nature's.
It was Nature's. Yeah. And then right afterwards, Soju was like, NA for you. NA sucks 1, 2, 3 or something.
Yeah, and then he bombed out on day 1. Well, anyways,
I want day 1 of regionals from last year. Soju, best version of Soju.
Oh
it
man,
was
that was fire.
frickety cracked. It was so good.
It was really good. Hopefully, we'll see the fruits of his labor. He says he's practicing a lot for this weekend's Challenger Series, and then we're gonna have him on in 2 weeks with another guest. Maybe we'll have them grade each other live on the podcast. That'd be pretty fun to see the other person's opinion of them. We'll tell you more about it once we lock in those details. But yes, in 2 weeks, we'll do another power ranking specifically for regionals, and we'll have that special episode. With that, we are at the end. Thank you so much to Ramkev, who has graciously given a lot of his time. And, of course, Bryce, 2 very busy guys. Let's go ahead and get some just final thoughts real quick, starting off with Ramkev, our guest.
I mean, it's been a great time. Fun discussion. Yeah. Don't look forward to seeing me in any of the upcoming tourneys because I will not be there. Yeah.
See you in set 7. Set 7 waiting room. All right, Bryce.
I had a lot of fun too. It was nice to really get in deep in the conversation on the different players and their strengths and weaknesses. And I think we could have talked about it for hours longer. I will look forward to seeing Ramkev again. I refuse to believe that we live in a world where we've seen the last of Ramkev playing competitive TFT, because I one of the first competitors. So I fell in love with Goose's play first, but I think that Ramkev, going to set 4, when I started watching you, and I was like, oh my god, this guy is like way better. He's like playing on a different level and no one is paying attention. And then to see you go into regionals and prove that, and go to worlds and prove that. And it's so clear to me that you're actually at that level if you're locked in right now. Like when your mental is good right now for these tournaments, you are the best player at the tournament, or certainly in the top 3. So I refuse to believe we live in a world where we've seen the last of you playing competitive TFT. I hope it's just, reset into this set, and set 7 you come back with a vengeance, because despite all of the success that you have had, you are still underrated. People still don't see it, and they don't see it because they're not paying attention. So, I am excited to see you come back and prove all of the doubters wrong once more, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be paying real close attention to set 7 tourney, the whole circuit, etc. I feel like for set 6 I kind of went into these tournaments autopilot, and I really can't do that anymore. Gonna read through all the rule sets, gonna see what I think and what my opinions are, and I'm gonna reevaluate and see if it's something that I'm really willing to commit to again, because I don't want to do another Zon Cup. That does not sound too fun for me.
It's fair.
All right, well, Ramkev's in the set 8 waiting room then, because set 7, I think we're kind of locked in. I think we're kind of locked in. Well, we'll let you know.
One more year, baby.
All right. My final shout out. Watch the Challenger Series this weekend, in particular because it's going to be really fun, high-stakes TFT. Also because the talent is a really important representation of what TFT can be. We have an all-clear desk with Jirachi, Bupasaurus, and Casanova. And I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about how there's a lot of prominent issues that's facing trans people, especially in America. What's going on in Texas is not okay. And I can't really understand what's going on, but I can do my best to at least raise awareness about everything that is affecting our friends and our family here at TFT. So please do your best to at the very least, read up on the situation if you haven't already, and send a nice message to some of these people who desperately need any kind of love, attention, help, care, whatever you can do. And that's the end of this episode of DTIYDK. Thanks so much everyone's tuned in. We'll try to post the VODs whenever we can. We have a podcast on anchor.fm, and we'll tweet about it. The best thing you can do is follow us on Twitter and follow the show. From Frodan, Bryce, and Ramkev, this has been DTIYDK Episode 3, and we'll see you next time. If I can find the transition screen. Where is it?